News of Ukraine Agency. My name is Oleg Dineka. Today we are joined by Dmytro Kavun, president and co-founder of Dignitas Ukraine, a foundation widely known for organizing and scaling a range of active defense initiatives, including drone-focused programs and grassroots-driven innovations. Dignitas Ukraine supports not only equipment delivery, but full capability cycles, FPV drones programs, ground robotics initiatives, operator training, and ecosystem development. Among its flagship efforts are Victory drones, Victory robots, and structured training programs for operators and technical teams. So, good morning, Dmytro.
Good
Dmytro,
morning.
as I have understood, you are in the US now, yeah?
Yes, I'm in New York today.
What is the issue? What is the problem, or what is the opportunity in the United States for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for your invitation to this conversation. Um, I was born and raised in Ukraine, and the past 27 years I've lived in the US. Um, Went to study here, work, family, and so I've been living here in the US for the past 27 years. Um, I've been volunteering for Ukraine since the Maidan Revolution. Uh, Ukrainian diaspora really stood up, especially the recent waves of immigration during Maidan Revolution supported uh, the the spirit of Maidan and you know, advocating for Ukraine and amplifying the voice of Ukrainians across the U.S. And which resulted in a number of new war organizations that were stood up in that period of time. If we go back a bit in history, as it's 250th anniversary of the United States this year, Ukrainians have been in the U.S. In a recorded time frame, I want to say probably about 150 years, if I'm not mistaken. So there were waves of immigration of Ukrainians, and one of the most probably significant before Maidan Revolution was the one that came through displaced person camps during World War II, and they've kind of kick-started a lot of the initiatives to cultural preservation of Ukraine abroad, as well as starting to advocate for Ukraine at the congressional level in the US. And in 2014, there was another wave of this with organizations that I joined, like Razom, United Help Ukraine, Nova Ukraine, and as well as in 22, there has been another wave of these activist, nonprofit charity organizations that are helping Ukraine in a variety of ways.
Dmytro, can you describe maybe briefly the mission and the main focus of your organization, Dignitas Ukraine? I want to ask you especially or particularly about the drone and counter-drone activities.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason for our kind of kickstarting Dignitas Ukraine in 2023 was because we looked back and we saw that there's a lot of great efforts in humanitarian front, but what was needed more was actually helping Ukrainian defenders, and not just Ukrainian defenders, but more in the technological space. One of our dear friends and you know, thought leaders in that space is Maria Berlinska, and we have been known each other probably since 2018 or so, and she's been always saying that drones are, you know, that's the future. And so when the full-scale invasion happened, you know, we were providing more on the humanitarian side, because we were under the impression that nonprofits can't help the Ukrainian military, but we've changed that perception around. And because specifically Maria was, well, we need drones. Drones are extremely effective on the battlefield. And at that point, we started buying, what was available. These are, Chinese Mavic 3 drones that are staple right now. They're still actively used on the front lines. And then, going back to your question about what's the mission of our organization, because we've seen where the help is needed most, right? We needed to stop the bleeding in Ukraine. Rather than helping with humanitarian efforts, we needed to stop the bleeding, and we have to fight the asymmetrical warfare. And Ukraine needs to win not just with a mass of people, but smarter, fight smarter, not harder. So our mission is, we believe in Ukrainian victory through technology and innovation. A lot of times this translates into our programs. We train, we supply, and we advocate. Training is extremely important, as that's the first step in having the defenders really know what they're doing. We've seen a lot of these efforts where the needs are vast on the front in Ukraine. So at the tactical level, there's always need. Hey, I need more drones, more drones, more drones, and there are organizations who just do that. They supply, and we looked in that space and we're like, well, this is never going to be enough. We need to be smarter than this, not just supply technology, but we need to first start with training. And so back in 22, actually, Victory Drones started as a volunteer initiative championed by Maria Berlinska. And we started putting together this course called the Use of Technology During Wartime, roughly translated. And Maria started pulling together a number of experts in the field, of some of it from the drone operations, some of it from electronic warfare, physics, the radio waves, how that works. I covered the cybersecurity aspect of things. There were other in topography and other areas. And that we developed that course altogether for the purpose of, giving Ukrainian defenders an ability to really, kind of jump online and go through this course to have a better ability to understand how the technologies can be applied specifically on the front lines. And that course transformed, it's still available today. It's closed to only the Ukrainian defenders. There's certain, checks that are done before allowing access in that respect. But it was fully crowdsourced, volunteer-led initiative that's still going on and being updated from time to time to be applicable to the current situation, because technologies evolve fast. And so started with that course and moved on to in-person training at the training locations in Ukraine, and expanded into more initiatives. You've mentioned our Victory Robots initiative. So in 22, we started the Victory Drones. 23, we started popularizing the FPV drones because they were more affordable, and affordability and the economy of scales. War is has significant aspect of economy to it. So FPV drones in 24, we moved on to start the first UGV school, the uncrewed ground robotic systems training, which is still going strong today. And in 25, we started a new direction of intercept drones that take down Russian Shaheds and other things like that. So that's kind of the long way of answering your question about the mission.
In any way, thank you very much for this activity. It's very important. It's very helpful. for our armed forces, especially for us, for our country. But you know, the last statement of the last statement of personnel, of UAV personnel on the front line was formulated by the former Minister of Digital Transformation, now the Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov. He was talking about nearly 20,000 of personnel of drone and counter-drone ecosystem in at the front line. So I think that it's a huge, highly performed, highly scalable personnel, and with a necessary skill, unique skill in the combat condition, you know, and from one side of coin, but from other side of coin, it's the issue. What is the perspective for these people in Ukraine after the war, for example, or not in Ukraine, but in the whole world? It's a huge potential for the drone industry all over the world. So maybe some words about this.
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? A lot of people are asking the question, what will happen after war, and trying to visualize that. And on one hand, it's a good question to ask because you need to visualize and prepare for that time. And in the other aspect, I'm very cautiously optimistic about the end of war. I just don't see it in that Russia will stop or conform to any agreements and stop attacking Ukraine. I think Russia is set to, until it exists no more in its current form, Russia will be always wanting to take over Ukraine. The root of the cause, besides the political, geopolitical, and economic, is the fact that the Russians are lacking self-identity, and they see Ukraine as part of it. They don't understand who they are essentially, and that's why they trying to take over. Of course, being that's imperialistic thinking in that respect.
After 4 years, it's obvious, yeah.
Yeah. To your question about what's next, what's the potential for all of these people who are trained in technologies, and so we are preparing for that on multiple fronts. First of all, we have a veterans program called Flight to Recovery, which trains veterans, wounded veterans, to learn how to operate drones, learn how to put them together, engineer. Some of that activity is going on in rehabilitation centers in Ukraine, some of it in other locations. But the idea is it's the kind of the aspect of some people, some veterans want to continue. A lot of veterans are motivated to keep helping Ukraine in any capacity that they can. And we give them that opportunity to say, hey, listen, maybe you don't have a leg, maybe you don't have two legs, but you can put on goggles and you can fly, and you can, really use your time, motivation, and hands to put together, to help build defenses, help build drones, come up with new solutions in that respect as well. We've over the past, just in 25, I think we've trained over 180 wounded veterans. Many of them went back to some who went back to in some capacity to help Ukraine, to the military forces. Some went to work for drone manufacturers as well. Ukrainian government strongly supports organizations to employing veterans in that respect, which is definitely a good thing. So, outfitting veterans and how having them, giving them purpose to keep helping Ukraine is something that we're very much committed to. The other effort is we're training Ukrainian, youth, uh, 10 to 17 years old, who are still in school. From all of them, their parents are on front lines. Most of them, these are kids whose fathers or mothers are actually flying drones on the front lines. And kids want to be like their parents. They're looking up to them. They also want to find out what drones are, how do they work, and learn to operate them and learn to engineer them. So we have a number of locations in Ukraine who do just that, right? They involve kids, teach them how to fly drones, and for kids, they pick up much quicker than adults. These skill sets, they start with a simulator, flying in a simulator in the computer. They go on to flying whoop drones, the small ones, and then we even organize competitions between kids, and it's a lot of it is camaraderie, building camaraderie, and again, technological skill sets. We see that the world will only keep developing these technical skill sets that can be reused not just in a war perspective, right, in defense perspective, but also for many other aspects of things, agriculture, deliveries, logistics, right? The things like Amazon flying drones, right, are not news, but people, as long as we probably remember, dreamed of flying, right? And there's no stopping to that, right? We'll always want to fly. It's a different perspective when we see the ground from above. So the technological aspects will keep developing and keep moving the world, not just in defense aspect, but in civilian great technologies as well.
Dmytro, let's focus on anthropological aspects. It's very
Mhm.
interesting for the human history at all. It and this is not my words. This is words from the prominent universities. For example, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They are very interesting, and they are researching now. I mean, MIT scientists are researching now this phenomena, not one phenomenon, but several phenomenon like crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, grassrooting, garage laboratories, and I don't know, maybe garage production, manufacturing. Most of them told about some phenomena, especially in Ukrainians. What can it be?
It's a very good question, right? Because Ukraine has been, if you look at some of the history of Ukraine, there's a lot of entrepreneurship in Ukraine. Um, I grew up in 90s, mostly in Ukraine. Now, those were very tough times. But also a lot of opportunities opened up after Soviet Union fell. Soviet Union stifled the entrepreneurship because they wanted to control everything, and it's very hard to control something like entrepreneurship spirit because it's very free in that respect. It's very new ideas, and Soviet Union was about suppressing ideas and controlling the message and everything, right? So in 90s, a lot of opportunities opened up, and a lot of Ukrainians' geographical aspect of things, being closer to Europe, closer, to Poland and others, European nations, basically started, this movement of, hey, let's come up with something that originally was to make money because, post-Soviet Union republics were not doing super well economically. But I think that was a component of this development of entrepreneurship. And of course, the 2000s and especially the more recent years before the beginning of war, there was a lot of people who could open up new businesses, and people generally knew a little bit more English and other languages that they can use to kind of learn, but also interact with the outside world outside of Ukraine. Ukrainian entrepreneurship spirit and the technological skill sets were probably the game changer of this war, and was the only thing that I would say that kind of helped stop Russians in its tracks. Of course, the bravery of Ukrainian defenders, is just unbelievable in that respect. But again, that was very much backed up by the technological solutions. Um, Again, since 22, when we started supplying those drones and training, uh, we've seen that people just started coming up with solutions very quickly, and basically building things as quickly as they can to fill the void, fill the need. And what helped was that these are regular people who were, civilians one day, and they were on the front another day, and they really, were thinking, what else can we do to protect ourselves? What solutions are missing? They were translating that message back, sometimes experimenting right on the front lines with solutions that can potentially, help. And so the deciding factor, in my opinion, is that not just the technological ingenuity and idea generating, brainstorming, it's also the short life cycle of implementation. You have an idea, you try it out, it kind of works. You talk to your family or your friends, further away from the front lines, and you tell them, hey, I need these components to try something out. They order it, they ship it into Ukraine. Nova Poshta, brings it as close as possible to the front lines. People put that together, test it out, it works. The MVP, the minimum viable product, is ready, and boom, you now have a product that is effective. And that has been a um, very powerful initiative. And a lot of times, um, companies come to us and say, "Hey, we want to make drones, right? Or some kind of technological solutions. How do we want to help Ukraine?" And as much as that is great, my first question is, where do you want to, how do you see that? Do you see that, manufacturing outside of Ukraine? They're like, yeah, we can't risk our people. We have to do it outside of Ukraine, somewhere in the United States or somewhere else. I'm like, well, very unlikely that this will work, that this will work in that sense. Why? Because by the time you take the need, you translate it, you manufacture it, you ship it back, that's too long of a life cycle to have. You need something as close, in Ukraine as possible to develop the technological solution, ship it to the front line, get the feedback, iterate on that product, because the technology does not stop. Technology keeps evolving very quickly. We see that the technology is basically on a monthly life cycle. There's new developments going on all the time, and the new products. There's new TTPs, tools, tactics, procedures that the enemy is adjusting, and the Ukrainian defenders are adjusting. So it's a technological, warfare that we're going into that keeps evolving. So that's the quick kind of overview
Yeah,
how I
yeah,
see
Dmytro,
these
but
technological iterations. And of course, there's something to say about the training, right? We're updating our courses constantly because some things just stop working, and we have to stop teaching them because we need to focus on the new skills.
Yeah, Dmytro, maybe the reason for this decision to relocate the production capacities or the manufacturer is the red tapes. I I have to say in this way, like bureaucracy issues in
Yeah,
Ukraine.
there's so bureaucracies, right? Like, so bureaucracy can be good when there's time and place for it, right? However, the problem with bureaucracy is that during the times of war, bureaucracy can be stifling, right?
Mhm.
So it can't apply in all the cases. I'll give you an example of how the success that we've seen is that in 23, when the FPV drone boom started kind of getting more popular, there was a lot of need for new components to be shipped into Ukraine. And the problem is it was all taxed at the border because there were just components and, you know, yes, they were needed, but the legislature in Ukraine was that, hey, you just tax all technological components.
Yeah.
And basically what happened was that we saw this as a, you know, 99% of these components and drones and other things that are going into Ukraine, they go straight to the front lines. Why tax them? You know, most of that is either, you know, money that charitable funds,
Yes.
fundraised for, or it just production that just goes straight benefiting defense of the country. So what we've done is we've, boots on the ground, Lubo Shapovich, our co-founder in Ukraine, and Maria Berlinska and others went and we basically, delivered this message to the government and said, hey, listen, this does not make sense. Took some time, but we were able to push that through, and there was a law passed that said, hey, there's an exception list that components, EW systems, electronic warfare, drones, drone components, and other things are exempt from taxation on at the border. So red tape is there. It is stifling. You can't just abolish it completely because there's a reason for it. It's a protection mechanism against corruption and in some cases it's a way to organize things, right? But it needs to be within reason, and it needs to be adjustable and quick to realize that with all these technological innovations, you need to, change the legal perspective and the red tape and remove it where necessary in that respect. And that's why we do, train, supply, and advocate. The advocacy is a very critical component to how we see the enabling, how technology can enable the victory, and that advocacy is very necessary in that respect.
Yeah, Dmytro, this approach I say closely aligned with with the focus that I personally brought to the last year's MIT Hackathon built for Ukraine, exploring how this red tape in defense innovation can be reduced or avoided by building direct bridges between the frontline needs, between the technology developers and the innovation so-called community, including crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, grassroots in manufacturing and training-centric models. And what was proposed conceptually during last year's hackathon has since been implemented in practice by your organization, Dignitas Ukraine, making today's conversation particularly valuable. So let's go to the interaction between grassroots innovation and formal R&D efforts in both Ukraine and globally. What works well and what gaps remain?
Uh, Yeah, no, maybe you can give me a little bit more there and how you know, background in that question so I can answer it.
There are many legislative gaps amongst different countries.
Mhm,
Uh, we see when at the front line, the prominent UAV developments from the United States, for example, are broken. They are broken not because of technical issues, but because of the legislative norms. They cannot be another devices, you know? So
mhm.
this issue is obvious now for not just for UAV developers or innovators, but for suppliers, for vendors, for the scientists. The whole world ecosystem of drone and counter-drone technologies is not ready. I mean, it is now developing, including the situation in Ukraine. And this situation, the Ukraine is catalyst for this process. So, what is the future for this ecosystem?
That is a deep question. I agree with you that these processes are broken, right? On one hand, there are talks about, hey, Ukraine can share the technology, share the drones and all the developments with the partners. However, on the other aspect of things, in my opinion, we are getting into the kind of the geopolitical question of trust between the countries, right? Because whatever Ukraine is developing, everybody's, other countries are looking at that and they're like, oh, wow, this could affect us as well in the future in the form of military, in the form of national security, protecting the borders, in the forms of terrorism, and various other components. And other countries, partners like United States and NATO countries, they want to learn from that experience and they want to develop these technological aspects. But a lot, there are no easy mechanisms to share that. In particular, you know, Ukraine also is somewhat limiting the outflow of technological innovation outside for a particular reason, right? There is some manufacturers in Ukraine, they make drones, and there's some red tape that exists that prevents selling to the Ukrainian government. It depends on the contracts, right? Um, so the block where the limitation that Ukrainian government created on outflow of technologies to outside of Ukraine creates um, somewhat stifling to the manufacturers because they can only sell to the Ukrainian government. Nobody else within Ukraine will buy these technologies other than, Ukrainian charitable organizations and, using fundraised funds. But there's not enough there. So if there was if it was allowed, the technology was to leave Ukraine, it needs to be in a very controlled manner so that it allows the manufacturers to grow and build capital and innovate. However, does so that they wouldn't just sell to the outside and not sell to Ukrainian government, because rightfully so, it's the outside market is a lot more lucrative in terms of prices and whatnot, right? So United States has also limitations. The ITAR, the ITAR prevents the technologies that were developed in the United States to leave without, United States without the permit, right? And that also, so there's a lot of limitations on both sides, and we need to learn to your point of building the bridging or the tunnels, however we want to call them, to allow the transfer of such technologies one way or the other, hopefully both ways, right? Again, my perception is that it's possible, if there's a will, there's a way. But what we are seeing at the geopolitical level and of trust is where there's a lot of ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
Is there that trust between the countries, between the leaderships of the countries, and because one of my favorite quotes is that leaders cast long shadows, right? And we want to make sure that whatever the leader of one country says does not cast shadow on the whole nation in a bad way, right? In that respect. So we need to make sure that these tunnels exist and there's um, a transfer of technologies and, more importantly, training as well. This is something that we're also looking into in the future, is that how can we help share these training opportunities with our partner countries. Of course, our first and foremost focus is on training Ukrainian defenders, but if there is an opportunity and there's a need to showcase that Ukraine is sharing the lessons learned with others, we can find ways.
Yeah, we can think about, maybe not so globally, but locally, about the Ukraine and Poland cooperation in this sphere. I mean, UAV and counter-drone technologies. If you know, on the 4th of November, the Vice Minister of Defense of Poland said that they are starting the Polish part of defense EU program, which is called SAFE, in the whole amount of 43.7 billion of euro. So the major part of this amount will be spent on exactly drone and counter-drone technologies, and most of them has to be from Ukraine. But this barrier from Ukraine side, like red tapes, but from the Polish side, like NATO standards, is very important, So it's the barrier for both sides. And
I know,
this is
I
the issue
know,
for the whole system all over the
yeah,
world, for the global system, on this
yeah.
example.
I know that there has been talk about the change of in Ukrainian legislature about allowing the transfer of technologies to the outside for a couple of months now. I think the fact that Mikhailo Fedorov was the head of digital transformation, is now the Minister of Defense, that will probably help with this speeding up of that aspect of things. I know it's in the works. I'm hopeful to see it in the next couple of months, that there's positive changes in that respect, at least from the Ukrainian side. I'm not entirely sure how, what from the EU perspective, what work is being done in that respect to allow that technology, innovation on the ground in EU specifically.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk on another topic. I mean, technically.
Mhm.
If we will think about if we think about the future of drone, we exactly have to look through the urban perspective, urban defense and city protection. I mean, counter drone measures, counter drone technologies. This topic is on the top now, and at the top now, and the way which we are discovering now among or in the framework of MIT Hackathon Build for Ukraine is acoustic detection of drones. So we have the scientific, technological collaboration with the company, Ukrainian company of acoustic defense, Zvuk, personally with Marian Sulima, who is the CEO of this company. And I want to ask you about this perspective. How you think, how it's what is the potential of this technology? And maybe some like better way, advanced way for countermeasure for counter drone sphere.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important to realize that the whole concept of what weapons mean have changed since the beginning of Ukraine's full-scale invasion. Before, weapons were thought of like these big and very expensive pieces of equipment, highly technological, but very expensive and kind of sparse, right? They don't there are not that many of them. However, the lack of those weapons that Ukraine had caused people to innovate and said, well, if we can't have a few big things, maybe we can build a number of smaller things that are more affordable that we can develop ourselves. And that's how we started on this technological journey of innovation in drone technologies, right? And honestly, it has shown that smaller but more numerous are more effective than few and more expensive. We've seen drones take out helicopters, tanks, armored vehicles, and whatnot, right? And so that it's an enabler, it's a technology enabler, and it's very effective. Similarly, protection-wise, like you mentioned, urban warfare, we are now experimenting, and Ukraine has experimented with the military formations like TRO, Territorial Defense Forces, in Ukraine since the beginning of full-scale invasion, but those formations quickly became part of, officially military structure, which is definitely good from control perspective, but also somewhat limiting in that respect. There is a further aspect called DFTH. They are civilian volunteer formations that are allowed to. They're kind of bridge between the public and the military. They can be trained, they can be armed, but they need to be in collaboration with these TRO units. And what we are experimenting and trying to, we believe that this is effective, is that specifically in anti-Shahed perspective, there's just not enough military crews that are capable of defending, right? So if you think about how many of these formations if each of the city can be surrounded by these civilian formations that work in concert with the territorial defense forces, which are more military formations, and share some of the technologies and information and intelligence, they can be effective. And we've seen them being effective in taking down Shahed drones effectively, essentially. So,
Dmytro, I'm
yeah,
very sorry about interrupting. I'm sharing my screen now with the information which is called roadmap of support DFTG like. It's your copyright, yeah? The copyright
can't see
of
the file right
Dignitas.
now, but I think I've seen that before.
Yeah. Це дорожня карта підтримки ДФТГ для територіальної громади.
Yes,
This is
that's,
the
yep.
official name of this document. And we held this call for action from the Dignitas and the email for the cooperation in this civil initiative. Exactly,
Yes,
yeah?
that's exactly the point, is that we're trying to showcase that this it's possible to do this, and in many time, in a lot of cases, there's no need for government involvement even in this case, right? Local businesses can sponsor their own kind of private anti-aircraft units that can protect their own kind of businesses, but also critical infrastructure, their homes. And if we scale this, right, and we basically build these, we train and supply these units with the interceptor drones that can protect the skies from Russian aggression, then Ukraine will, that's exactly what's going to be called the drone shield or drone wall that's been popularized before, more so in from government perspective. Drone wall has been used a number of times, but again, this is another. We're playing on that motivation, activism, and trying to engage all resources possible from people, regular people who are donating every day, to more so businesses who are very much vested in protecting their infrastructure and their people against Russian aggression.
Dmytro, I think these remarks, your remarks about this whole crowdsourcing ecosystem in Ukraine is very helpful and will be very useful for our partners activity. I mean, our partner is the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So I want to remind that till the end of January, the hackathon Built for Ukraine is continuing. And I want to ask you about maybe some advice or maybe some words for the scientists and researchers, innovators who are participating now in these events.
Yeah, I think one of the, and I'm sure that there is some level of awareness, right? But the gathering, in reading up about what is going on in Ukraine, to really understand the scope of challenges, and not just the scope of current challenges and technological challenges, but really look into the history. And it doesn't have to be long, right? We can just take the time frame 2022 to now, see how the trajectory of technology has been moving along, right? Certainly keep current challenges in mind, and potential solution to them, but also look forward, right? the physical space and electronic warfare space is to a certain degree limited. It's limited by physics, but it's also limited by economy. The effective solutions have to be affordable, because if they are affordable, they can be kickstarted into development much faster, because you can't wait to fundraise $2 million to start working on something anymore, at least during the active phases of war, right? You have to start small and keep iterating, and maybe keep fundraising at the same time to develop something that will work, right? Like an FPV drone, or an electronic warfare unit that intercepts the video signal to see where the drone is going. Being aware is step one, right? And step two is to build the relationships with people in Ukraine, to build the partnership. One thing, those are very critical, because then you can find out from the boots on the ground what needs are there, what works, what have been tried, what hasn't, worked already. And those partnerships are an enabling factor in scientists. So we need to connect the bright minds that exist in MIT and other places to exactly what the problem is, and what the root cause of the problem is, from technological perspective. Geopolitical, we know that that's because Russia is attacking Ukraine. So I would say awareness, partnerships, and kind of looking forward, finding opportunities maybe for funding these developments that can enable this innovation for the future.
Thank you very much. Dmytro Kavun, the president and co-founder of Dignitas Ukraine Foundation, thank you for your insight. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your support of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.